Good morning, everyone. We're so glad that you came to visit and spend a little time with us today because we want to discuss Cohort 16's closeout. And it is a tedious product process, but we want to make sure that we provide you with the smoothest transition through it. So we're going to give everyone maybe just a few more seconds, maybe a minute or two to see if anybody else wants to join us. If you don't have any questions, sometimes just listening to someone else's question may spark you to ask something that may come up or whatever. But I just want to say good morning, everyone, and we give everybody about just a few more seconds. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you're in here, hopefully you're here visiting with us for office hours as it pertains to program directors knowing the process. We are closing out cohort 16. This is year three of the grant for the 21st Century Grant. I am Alicia Alves and have been um, taking the lead in this process. But of course, if you have any questions with your assigned LSD specialist or with your TA, we're happy to assist you with that process. So at this time, we're just going to go ahead and open it on up. And if you have any questions, if we need to pull up any documents to just kind of go back through them, we will. Hopefully, the recording was I tried to make it as explicit as I possibly can. I know some of you were like, she's really going through each one of these forms. I did because a lot of times when we go through the process for closeout, if we have any questions, those who've either worked the program or who um, whatever the case may be, we can't get in touch. We need to finalize some things, and we just want to make sure we have closed out in such a way that if we're ever audited, whether it be the state level or the federal level, we have everything that we would need without having to contact you regarding your grant. So at this time, are there any questions about anything pertaining to the closeout process?
Morning.
Good morning.
Okay, you can hear me. This is Cynthia. So I'm going to ask about the closeout form because I thought that one was it seems self-explanatory, but I want to make sure that I understood everything you said. So
Okay. Let
with
me
the
pull it up.
final,
Let me
oh, okay,
pull it up
go
for
ahead.
just a minute. Is that okay?
Sure.
So we can, okay. Okay, so is this the one we're talking about, Cynthia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Go
So I
ahead.
see that we have a final date of the program. So that will be the last day that our programs will be open. And then we have the physical closeout date. Is that not one and the same, or are you asking for the date we did the FER close
So are you
form?
referencing where it says final date of program and then date of fiscal closeout?
Yes.
Yeah, so the final date of program will be the last day that you'll be operating as a Cohort 16 grant. You may be awarded a new 21st Century grant, but because it's up under a different funding source, you should have a different date, even though no one will know that your program has ended. So, for example, we all know that the use of the grants funds end on September 30th, and the way the grant was originally written was to end on September 30th. So your final date of program should be September the 30th, 2025. However, your date of fiscal closeout may be beyond that because if you have any receipts, um, any unpaid invoices, anything that reflects a date that is on or before September 30th, and you need to submit an ES2 to get it taken care of, you need to give a projected date. You may not be able to completely finalize that until maybe October 30th, if that's the case. So
Okay.
that's okay. But just remember, and this is just for everybody's understanding, when we're talking about that FER process, you know how you have to go in to EGAP and
Mhm.
start the FER um, draft. And that's when you're going in and saying that you have submitted all of your ES2s, you've gotten all your um, reimbursements, you don't have any lingering receipts or invoices laid out that maybe somebody, you paid for it or whatever the case may be, you are done. And so you go into EGAP and you do that FER process. Right now we're doing it so that we can get carryover funds. But now you need to do it so that you can close out the actual grant. Is that clearer for you?
Yeah, so we got to go back in there. So what's the difference between that one at least and the one where you highlighted deadline date, all expense reports turn in and funds spent? Because that's what I was thinking. I would have to go and use that October time frame because I know our last pay period is not until October 7th. So my
Mm-hmm.
ES2s for that month of September will not be submitted to you all until sometime in October. So what's the difference
Mm-hmm.
in those two dates?
So the difference between the date of fiscal closeout is when you're actually going to go in to EGAP and go through the process and get it approved from LEA accounting, closing you completely out. So that means that you're not going to be saying that I have additional receipts that I need to submit. The all expenses reports will be it may be different. It just depends on how you get everything in. So my all expenses is turned in is saying that I don't have any more expenses. That reminder is just saying you cannot request for any reimbursements after September the 30th because that's the date that the grant ends. So you cannot submit any reimbursements for anyone working on October the 1st forward. You cannot submit anything regarding let's just say some purchases you made for books or anything of that nature. If it's dated anything after September the 30th, it will not be recognized as being able to be reimbursed. And so what I'm saying when I check off yes, all my expenses have been done, that means I don't have anything lingering out. If I say no, that is because I'm waiting for the actual maybe the product I paid for, but I haven't gotten my product. When do I expect to get my product? Then I'll put my date over here, but I have paid out. So sometimes this
Okay.
date is going to be different from the FER because the
Mm-hmm.
FER is saying this has been completed, all the expenses have been completed, and now I just need to close off through EGAP to show I have done everything.
Okay, that makes sense. So when is the this form expected to be completed? Does that have to go
Yeah,
before our date on the calendar?
so your date, this needs to be completed and sent in during the emails that are sent to your TA or given to your
Okay,
TA the date of your site visit.
okay,
These are projected dates that we need to
gotcha.
know so that it may not be finalized, but you need to have some type of projected date. So let me just tell you all a little bit what will happen after September 30th. We're going to go back and we're going to pull these documents and make sure that the things that you said were going to be done have been done. If they have not been done, that's why we have all this information on here so that we can contact you and just say, hey, we noticed that you said that their FER process was going to be done by November the 1st. It is November the 15th. It has not done. Can you give me, some time or what's going on as to why it has not been done so that we don't have anything lingering out, any loose ends setting out. So that's the purpose of this form. So just know the dates don't have to be set in stone, but it gives you a projected date and a deadline as well to say, hey, these things need to be done.
Okay, and one final question on that same form is right underneath that highlighted. What type of GEPRA and easy reports information are we talking about? Are we talking about, well, I'll just let you say, tell me because I'm not really sure.
Okay, so when we're talking about all the Gapper, you remember how we're making sure that we've got all our attendance, we completed everything to show that they're in power schools, all the data that's associated with the GAPRA and EASY reports, because we know the EASY reports is giving us the data to put into GAPRA, right? So we just want to make sure that all of that has been completed and up to date so that when we close out, whatever numbers that you have is it. And I'm going to ask Erica if she doesn't mind expounding a little bit more on that.
So, yes, attendance, all of the things in Easy Report that you turn in monthly, but also surveys for the summer, surveys for the fall, all the things that we just went through with the GEPRA justifications. So, if you have missing data, making sure that you have your justifications in there, making sure that all of your people have been flagged in Power School, all of those things to make sure that when we do get to the GEPRA open window, the 20-point APR window, we don't have to reach out to you if you're no longer a grantee. So, yes.
So Erica, is that something that you're saying that we need to make sure that the people who have access to the GEPRA um site, or is that something that just like we had to do with this long report we did, we just need to make sure that they said they've done what they need to do? Or is it something that they need to give us so that we can say we're responsible for that piece?
You should have given them and we'll send an email reminder about that in the next couple of weeks. You should given them a list of your students to make sure that they were flagged. If they want to print out something to show you that they were flagged, Amanda is going to pull a report before everybody rolls off to make sure that you have flagged your students. But pretty much it's going to be that you made sure that you did your part, not just saying, oh well, we forgot, we're not sure if they flagged it, and not waiting until September 25th to give them a list of students to flag. You make sure that during the summertime that you're giving them a list of your summer students. You make sure, in August that you're giving them a list of your students to flag, and then you're following up in September to say, hey, did you flag them? Those type of things. So not necessarily that they're going to print out a list for you to make sure that the students have been flagged, but they can pull a report, and you can send them that email to show them how to pull a report if you want verification. But at least have documentation that you went to them, you said, hey, I need this documentation. I need you to flag these students so that the data is correct in 21 APR.
So if we have a summer program, you're also expecting a projected date that they will have those student flagged.
Generally, if
Well,
you have a summer
yeah.
program, we're asking by June 20th at the latest because they're
Okay.
going to shut down Power School for a little while to in a sense roll over. So you'll make sure that you flag your students pretty early in the summer so that we know that they're flagged, and we can actually get the 24-25 data versus if once they roll over, we can't get the data from the previous year.
Erica,
All right.
did I hear
Thank you.
you say in the fall that we would need to do the survey? And are you referring to the teacher survey or did I misunderstand?
No, summer survey. We're not
Okay,
asking you to
okay,
do a fall survey early,
okay,
no. So
okay,
yeah, the
great.
summer
Thank you.
survey.
Thank you.
Good
And
question though.
and those are some good questions because if you notice on the screen, it is specifically asking who was completing that process. Because what happens is a lot of people transfer, may go out of state, and we all know that accountability is held with the funds based on this data. And so we want a projected date of who is going to make sure it gets done. It may be a team effort to get it done, but who was the whole person that's responsible for making sure that it gets done in their phone number? Because if we have any questions or we have any concerns about any of the information, we know who we can contact directly in order to get it taken care of. But these are some good questions. Are there any other questions, especially regarding this form? And at the very bottom of this form where it says closeout documents received, that's going to be to the ALSDE to us. So once the TA collects all of this information, they're going to submit it to us. if you are my person that's on my team, I will sign off on it and date it and the date that it was received. So just know that when you're completing this document, there should not be any blanks, empty areas. You should have some projected date or deadline and just keep a copy for yourself so that you stay on your deadline, especially if you have to rely on other people to complete the process.
Good morning. I have a question. How y'all doing?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
All right. So I know on the final date of the program you said September 30th, correct? But
Correct.
do you all recommend, especially if this site is not getting new funding for a new grant, to
Mhm.
actually run a program in August and September, or just summertime, hey, that's it, and kind of leave it at that? Because it'll only be 2 months
Right.
in the
And that's
fall.
that's a very good point, Dr. Alexander. So what I would suggest, if is anybody, send us an email requesting that you end your grant early, because remember, you were allocated funds based on the number of weeks, the number of students, the number of hours in order to be able to get the amount that you have. So therefore, there may be money hanging out. And so you want to just show your due diligence and just saying, whether or not you did or did not get the 21st Century New Cohort um, grant, or you're not going to have an after school program. I would kind of still follow that guideline when we talked about transferring inventory. I would try to keep that in mind as my rationale as to why we're not going to continue with keeping the grant going through the to the fall months, because school starts in August and then the grant ends September 30th. And so I can completely understand that being your rationale, but just make sure you give it some meat when you make your decision, because that's going to be documentation to go along with your grant for reasons why you're ending it early. It was originally written to end September 30th, but Amanda saw the foresight of how we needed to probably change that, and so the date has changed from the beginning with summer cohort 25 and moving forward with cohort 26 as to when the beginning and end date of a grant will be. But you're absolutely correct.
Because I can see, as far as, and here's another question, as far as, the school may still have a after school program, but it may not be on the scale as the 21st Century staff. And
Hmm.
so I'm just trying to kind of visualize, like, how could we, continue to do that for 2 months and then scale down October 1 just for those individuals, because we won't have the money, the funds anymore. So I'm just trying to get some insight on that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alicia, quick
Yes.
question.
Uh-huh.
Um, so if a program ends at the end of summer, um, where so other expenses, like for example, the external evaluator, because that person would be working on the final report, which would be due September 30th. That would be a bill that would be later, after the end time. Is that okay?
Yes, because you should have an MOU on file that shows the date of services, and you're just waiting for the product to come to you.
Okay,
So
all right.
your date of services ends September the 30th, but you won't get you're supposed to get your and you might want to encourage your external evaluator to make sure they stick to that deadline that's in the MOU, but you should get your report, end of the year report, before that deadline date.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Those are some good questions. Any other questions? Everybody got a good understanding of how to do their equipment, how
So
how
when
that.
you're speaking of equipment, we're just
Mhm.
speaking of devices, things on that, like, are we talking about resources also? as far
So
as everything that was bought by 21st Century Funds, maybe like, let's say it's ACT books or things like that? Or are you all just talking specifically about inventory as far as devices, Chromebooks, on printers and things like that?
So yes and no. And the reason why I'm gonna say yes and no is because the equipment is being documented on the equipment form, right? That you actually purchase with 21st Century Funds. We don't require that you keep a log of your inventory when it comes to consumable resources, such as like an ACT book that you use to, or any type of curriculum. But what we are saying is that we want you to follow the same process of transferring those resources to another after school program that's having a after school program in that building at that same site, or another 21st century program that may be in the district for it. So you kind of want to make sure it follows the purpose of why you were given them funds, which was for an after school program. So even though you do not have the inventory for non-consumable resources on a, say for instance, like a equipment inventory form for equipment, you still want to do your due diligence with your resources and make sure that you follow those same guidelines. So if you're an LEA or a CBO, we should not see where equipment, not equipment, but non-consumable resources such as library books or um, ACT books or anything of that nature stayed at the business office or even at the office level of an LEA when it could be still distributed to those students who are in another 21st century program or that are in an after school program at the site or anything of that nature. Does that answer your question, Dr. Alexander?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So good questions. Any other questions or concerns? So let's see. Did everyone understand this, the closeout process when you're doing your narrative of how to select your options and how you're going to maintain equipment and how you're going to handle the equipment? Hopefully that was clear in the recording, but do we need to revisit it just for clarity?
No, you did very well in your recording.
Okay.
Very
Thank you.
thorough. Thank you.
You're welcome. I tried to be, sometimes they say, Alicia, that's too thorough. But I prefer to be overly than not have enough. And then there's a lot of questions, or we get in the midst of, hey, and new applications coming in and people having questions about things or having to redo things. So we try to do it from the beginning. Thank you. I got a little hand clap from my supervisor. Thank you, Amanda. And then let's see. Everybody understand how the inventory form should be conducted, when we should actually do the actual transferring of equipment. Any questions about that process? Because we want to make sure that we complete it if we know it's going to be transferred. But if we know we have a summer program, then we're going to wait and actually physically do the transfer after your summer program. And I want to strongly, strongly suggest that you make contact with the receiving school, even if it's at the site where you currently are. If it's going to go to the site because they're going to have another after school program, or if they're going to be a Title I school because there's no other 21st century program in your district and you know it's going to stay right there, you need to notify the school, the LEA, look, all this equipment is going to stay right here and we're going to deliver it on this day and we're just following the guidelines for the federal we're just following federal guidelines. So that if there's any questions, such as I just remember, when you are in the summer and you're a building principal, things are everywhere. Like, because you're cleaning and you're trying to get ready for the fall. You're trying to get ready for any district meetings or PD that's going to go on through the summer, and you don't want to be um, adding to that plate for that building principal at the last minute of something for equipment. So if they know in enough time that they can prepare a storage room that'll be able to store those things and have a process in place where they can check out those items, then they'll be prepared for it. And I just remember being a building principal. I wanted the equipment, but it would be a hardship on me if it was last minute trying to move and get prepared for that. So just keep that in mind if you're in a situation where you're going to be transferring equipment. I must have done a pretty good job because y'all have really no questions. Okay, I'm going to go to another form just to make sure. Does everybody understand that this form is used as a guidance as a program director, but it's actually going to be used by the TA once they come out? Everybody understand that about the checklist? So that's kind of like your checking back and forth. And this one last area about compliance monitoring, we know your cohort 16, year 2 was when you went through compliance monitoring, but if you had any additional documents as a cohort 16 that needed to be provided to meet some needs for compliance monitoring, then that would be pertaining to you. If that didn't pertain to you, then that's an NA for you.
Lacey, I've got a clarifying question here, and I might have just, missed out. So
Okay.
you're talking earlier about resources like your library books and whatnot. They
Mhm.
probably have not been listed on an equipment inventory. They might be on an inventory somewhere, but now are they going to need to do a separate inventory for this in order to transfer or whatever?
I would hope you would have a list of things as a subgrantee holder of the grant that you're going to make sure that the person knows that they're receiving. But as far as an official document from us, our responsibility is with equipment. When it comes to non-consumable resources on the state level, we're not responsible for that, but we do want you all to do your due diligence and letting the receiving school know that, hey, these are some resources that we purchased with 21st Century Grant, and we're going to provide that for you all as well. We just want to make sure that we're not keeping them, at a business,
Right.
or we're
Right.
not, not keeping them and just distributing them to anyone who wanted them. We just want to make sure we use them for the purpose for which the money was received for.
So will we need to look for that document that says we're sending you additional goodies here as far as library books and STEM kits or whatever, or just
So
here you go,
as
there it is.
So as the technical advisor, no, you would not be asking
Okay,
them to receive that. That would be something that the program director would just do their due diligence when they're transferring
great.
that to the receiving school.
Okay, that works. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you, and you
You're
did a great
welcome.
job with the video and the
Oh,
PowerPoint. Yay.
thank you. Thank you, Ellen. All righty. So speaking of, let's just say inventory, does everybody understand that we are going to make sure that regardless if we purchase equipment or not, that one is completed for each year and for each site? We're all on the same page with that, right? And we're going to also make sure that we complete all of this part, except for the very bottom is when um, the TA will take care of the final sign out as far as who it was checked by. And you're going to email this form to them before the actual visit because they're going to pre-select those items without notifying you as the program director of those items so that we can make sure that we've shown that it was unannounced and that you do have your things um, labeled and that you do have the serial numbers and not everything matches. And so just keep that in mind because this is a really big important piece that does need to be emailed to your assigned TA so that they can have an idea of what they're going to be asking for when they come to each site. Now remember, if all of your sites did not purchase any equipment, there's no need as a program director to take your TA to each site. You only take them to the sites that have equipment that is housed at that particular site. Any questions about any of that? And you want to also make sure that, because right here in this small print, I was trying to get it all on one form, but on this small print, by law, we have to talk about how we do our inventory process, how we do our disposal process. We even have to talk about loss of prevention process, right? Guess what? It's in the narrative. So we're not going to reinvent anything and ask you to do anything else. You would just have a copy of that approved ALSDE approved, a copy of the ALSDE approved narrative that was submitted to us on the state level, and then we will return it saying it has been approved, and then you'll have it with your inventory to submit to your TA the day of the site visit, day of the site visit. Any other questions? Let's see. Everybody understand the calendar, your assigned dates? We have had some situations where it was conflictive with some district things, and so we have worked individually with just a few, but for the most part, and haven't heard from anyone else. But if that's the case, you do know that we're willing to work with you, but we're really trying to make sure that we stick to the date because we want to take care of the closeout before we get out for the summer and people disperse. So that's one of the rationales for getting everything done before really Memorial Day in May. Yeah, I think that's about it. I think we went over I went over the forms just to make sure you understood.
So Alicia, in the narrative, those options, now I'm prepared to send mine, but I won't know because I'm going for the 26 grant.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I have to choose one.
Okay, so you're talking about one of these options here.
Right.
Okay, so hopefully by the time you got your date, I'm sorry, not hopefully by the time it's time for you to submit, you will have received notification. We do know that the grant is en route. It has left our level and it's on the level with Dr. Mackey's office. And so hopefully that'll be any day for the announcement. But if
Right.
it's not the case, I would suggest saying I have applied for 21st Century Grant and I'm planning to keep the equipment here. However, if it's not, what is your plan B? If you don't get
Okay.
the grant, what's your plan B? So
I
that's
just
a
wanted to
very
know.
good that's a good
Okay.
question.
All
Yeah.
right. I didn't know if I should go ahead and do the or, give a
Yeah.
on that, but I'll wait a few days, and if we haven't, then I can go ahead and submit it to you with that.
So
Thank
that's
you.
a good one. I'm gonna elaborate a little bit more on that one because that was a good thought process, Cynthia. So you all, if you're at option one and you're right where you're saying that you applied for the 21st Century Grant and you're just waiting to get confirmation whether or not you been awarded, you can mention that. But however, if not awarded, you need to come up with a plan B. So if your plan B is, I'm a cohort 17, there's another 21st century grant in my district. So if we don't receive the funds and we don't plan on having an after school or out of school time at that particular site, we have a cohort 17 that is in the district that the cohort 16 is. And so we plan on transferring that equipment to the cohort 17 because that's another 21st century grant. So that's how you can move. And then you will go through your options. Remember, we talked about option one goes with A, two, B, and so forth. Does that make sense what I'm saying, y'all? I hope it does. But that was a very good point to
Ma'am, it
bring out.
does.
Okay. Amanda, did you want to say anything? Because I think I'm done with the questions. No one
No,
else
I was
has
going to say
any.
the exact same thing you said. So you did a good job of that. Yeah, hopefully
Okay.
we'll find out any day now
Yes.
about or we'll be able to announce any day now. So every day I walk in my office and hope that there's something sitting on my desk saying that he signed the paper so we can go forward.
Yes, we're just as anxious as you all are. Okay, well, I think that concludes. We do have another virtual office hour at 3:30. If you think of some other questions that may come to mind between what we talked about now, and then you're welcome to come back and join us again. If not, have a great rest of the Tuesday and continue with all of your hard work. We appreciate what you're doing, but we really appreciate the fact that you know the importance of having a smooth closeout. Thank you.